everyone, and thank you for joining us today. Over the next few minutes, we'll be talking to you about the growth drivers of the e-commerce and the D2C segment in India and the dynamics around the space. We'll start by Charu helping us setting the tone by talking about some key numbers that are marking the space today and in the future years. Over to you, Charu.
Thank you, Pakhi. So let's start with talking about the Indian retail industry. As you can see, that Indian retail market, which stood at USD 830.5 billion in FY20, is expected to see a steady growth and will reach US dollar 1,225 billion by FY26. From FY23 to 26, it is expected to grow at a CAGR of 10%. And following the same trend like each year, FMCG is expected to take the lead in the category from FY23 to 26. The share of, from FY23 to FY26, the share of online retail market is expected to grow at a CAGR of 30%, with online mobile shopping taking the lead by 60%, converted to a 21 billion, followed by apparel, which will be followed by apparel at 17, and food and grocery at somewhere around 14 billion. And a major part of e-commerce nowadays is D2C. D2C segment is also growing here in India at a CAGR of 45% and contribute to 30% of e-commerce, and is expected to contribute 30% of e-commerce by FY26. The leading categories in D2C are grocery and lifestyle, followed by other few categories, which I'm sure Pakhi will take you through.
Thank you, Charu. That was helpful. So team, before I move on, I'd just like to set the context to say that during the COVID, we saw some muted times for the retail sector. However, the traditional and the modern brick and mortar retail segments ceded contribution share to the online sector, and that's why we sit at that 8% contribution share of retail, which was until a few years ago only at a 2 to 3%. And as Charu just mentioned, is expected to grow at a 30% CAGR. The key reason this happened, team, is that large e-com retailers grouped to address the challenge on vectors of both supply and demand. They enabled channel experience for a seamless experience. They even tech-enabled the entire ecosystem. And of course, we had other enablers of technology, fintech, and logistics on customer acquisition and experience that supported that. So we'll talk a little about these and set the context as we walk along. So we did see that there was a muted response and there was a dip in the funding in the e-commerce and the D2C play. And I think this was vis-a-vis what we saw during the COVID times of the quarter year 21 and 22. But I would like to look at it from an optics which is different here. I would like to perhaps put forth the thought that the segment is maturing. We're moving towards more viability and profitability vectors and levers, right? And hence, these are all signs about how the entire segment is moving, even from a supply and even from an investor perspective. And it's also interesting to see, Charu did talk to you about how each category is a commensurate, sizable scale. And each of our e-commerce horizontal, vertical players, as well as the D2C players, are looking at it from a category-centric lens and offering you gaps in product, in customer acquisition, in engagement. And hence, while we are seeing that the levers are moving towards viability and profitability, simultaneously there's a lot of encouragement and enthusiasm even for the growth stage, multiple D2C offerings and products that are coming out there, right? And very interestingly, leaders in this market and incumbents who have otherwise led the play in FMCG, beauty and personal care have started to look at our D2C players from a perspective of active acquisition. They are hoping to, while our D2C players are hoping to run on their robust networks and their economies of scale, the incumbents and our leaders in this sector are hoping to learn from them to understand more agile go-to-market strategies and also to understand tech-enabled customer acquisition and engagement. Yeah. Now, we'll talk to you now a little about the key trends of the e-commerce segment and then move on to key trends of the D2C segment. You know, of the entire e-commerce pie of 70 billion that Charu just mentioned earlier in our chat, we see that the tier 1, the metro cities, which are the top 8 cities, contribute around 30% of this market. The next tier 2 cities, which mark around 40 cities, contribute the next 30%. However, it's very interesting to know that the tier 2 cities, which are a large 90 to 100 cities, are a significant 40% contribution share of the entire e-commerce pie. And e-commerce players, both horizontal as well as vertical, have driven and put into play a large number of triggers to ensure this significant 40% that we see today. I'll talk to you a little about these, right? Yeah. So, you know, there are new models that have come about because there's been an attempt to take into cognizance how these shoppers in these smaller tier 3 cities, what are their shopping behaviors, what are their shopping patterns. And the new models that we see are, you know, reseller models, group selling, as well as video selling. And the incumbents have also responded. They realize this is a very important segment of the consumer pie, and they have also responded by ensuring that there's either acquisition or they're also making sure that they have the same consumer experience or elements within their offering. Just give me a second. I'll talk to you a little more about this pie. Also, what has been interesting, team, is that the leading resellers have also put into action, you know, establishment of warehouses and fulfillment centers in these smaller towns, right? They've also made sure that there's an emergence of a social commerce-led business model, which we just talked about, which encourages trust, which encourages competitive pricing, and also more assisted selling, right? There's been a development of Kirana delivery programs and onboarding of local Kiranas, so ensuring that the entire ecosystem is benefited so that they could serve as dark centers, right? And of course, there's been an increased focus on voice and video, as we know that the vernacular speaking internet-based users is nearly 3 times the English speaking. And here we've seen interesting activations such as app accessibility in multiple languages, voice and vernacular searches, as well as visual commerce. Charu did talk about that in her introduction chat. Let's talk a little about the D2C pie. While we've you know, covered the e-commerce drivers, we did see that there is a lot of interesting, the entire D2C pie is expected to grow from a 15 billion USD current opportunity to nearly a 45 billion opportunity. And we did tell you that it is becoming extremely category specific, and they are customized offerings vis-a-vis every category on product, on innovation, on customer acquisition and experience. So while we did for a very long time look at mass manufacturing, D2C has enabled what you would call customized. Customized packaging was only the start of it. It's moved on to have made to order. On to have made to order. It has what you would call customized bundled products, DIYs, right? So in order to stand out in the market and get an edge over competition, e-tailers and D2C brands are increasingly relying on personalization as a strategy, right, team? Also, there's been, of course, technology innovations driving disruption in the D2C space, right? There has been AI and ML ensuring improved customer service through AI chatbots, virtual assistants ensure that consumers have a smooth and complaint-free online experience and browsing shopping experience. AI-powered platforms enable more sharper customer analytics and customer acquisition. And of course, there's AR and VR enhancing the entire shopping experience. And they're very interesting examples of categories that had never witnessed this before. For example, lens cart and eyewear is increasing customer, faces you to give a AR imagery and experience to the shopping, right? I think the category has succeeded very sharply in building. They're category leaders who've emerged in this play. And while we talked of tech innovation, I think there's an immense amount of investment that's gone in what you would call product innovation. And there have been category creators, new categories such as pet care, the entire ecosystem of service around the pet care through grooming, through behavior training, and restaurants and cafes, as well as robust products. Brands such as Caffeine use coffee and chocolate to make sure that they are putting across a holistic product for you. Ruby Organics and other brands such as Soul Tree and True Elements and the Whole Truth make sure that we're going back to our Indian, ethos and bringing to the fourth categories such as Ayurveda, the cosmetics, and good eating that had never existed. Be Safe, a homegrown brand of ours, is making sure that wellness and sanitization as a category has had heavy muscle building, right? And continuing on that, we'd also like to see another very interesting trend to build loyalty, and this also lends to sharper, consumer-based large data analytics, is the subscription model, right? Subscription economy is based on the idea that consumers are happy subscribing, and this also helps large D2C brands and retailers to understand dynamics of shopping, frequency of shopping. They're able to develop sharper and smarter consumer cohorts, and they're able to address them with more personalized and customized products. And then, of course, there's been a very interesting, we did talk to you about how there have been category specificity that has come into play, which we have started to witness with niche categories owing to this entire D2C ecosystem. And hence, if I could just talk to you quickly about the key dynamics for some large categories that Charu mentioned are leading, which is food and beverages and fashion and lifestyle and beauty and personal care. So like there is food and beverages. There's higher focus on food standards when making purchases. Locally sourced and sustainable plant-based foods is also gaining momentum. In the health and wellness, there's a rising demand for apps that give personalized nutrition, DIY plans for each consumer suited for their own challenges and their own problem statements. And consumers are increasingly seeking online consultants, remote monitoring solutions, and digital health solutions, right? Beauty and personal care. Consumers are searching for keywords, as I just mentioned, organic, chemical-free, sulfate-free, and there's pet care. There's an increasing ecosystem that's come to be that was not addressed earlier. There was only MNCs that were catering to this, the segment of that economy. And consumer electronics. Until now, we only knew of mobile phones. We talked of it being a large 60%. But now we see wearables and listenables and wearables. And it's very interesting. Until now, this was dominated only by international brands. But we have players such as Boat and Noise who've made the entire category accessible as well as aspirational and a quality category and a product to engage with. And I think lastly, another key point that I would like to make is, while we talk of this entire sector and we coin it as the e-commerce sector, I think there's been a tremendous effort and opportunity to grow offline, and leading players such as First Cry, Lenskart, Nykaa, and Pepperfry have been leveraging the offline channels for visibility and the ambition for scale. And so as we set the tone, I think what we are trying to say is that it's a seamless channel. It's the consumer and where the consumer shops is now becoming extremely fluid and is overlapping. And it is this ecosystem of retailers and brands who are consistently working on making this space, enabling this space for this experience. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
To add last few words, the category which emerged during the COVID has become an inseparable part of our lives. And all thanks to the consumers and all the retailers who are experimenting and innovating in these times. Thank you so much.